Did you really think I would trust you so easily? Ethan Monroe's voice echoed through the grand hall, low and controlled, while Lila Johnson froze mid-step, her hands gripping the silver tray she was carrying, the polished crystal glasses rattling lightly against each other. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors that reflected the golden glow of the chandeliers above, every surface immaculate, every corner painstakingly arranged. Lila had been with the Monroe estate for just under 3 weeks, and in that short time, she had learned the invisible rules. Never meet Ethan's gaze, never comment on the meetings she passed by, and never, under any circumstances, interfere with the documents left on the grand oak desk in his study. But today something about the air felt heavier, charged with a tension that made her pulse quicken. She had noticed it when she entered the foyer, the subtle narrowing of Ethan's eyes as he stepped from the shadows of the double doors, his tailored navy suit perfectly fitted, the faint scent of cedar and leather following him like a second skin. A faint hum of the air conditioning mingled with the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in the corner, each tick a reminder that time was moving, that decisions had to be made. Lila's mind raced, recalling the moments earlier in the kitchen, the soft scrape of the knives against the cutting board, the careful placement of each garnish on the silver platters, and how Ethan's security cameras had been angled in a way that captured everything. She had seen the glow of the monitors when she passed by, a hint of the surveillance system that tracked her every motion, but today the screens felt like silent witnesses to a judgment she could not yet predict. Her breath caught as she approached the staircase leading to the second floor, her polished black shoes clicking against the marble, echoing in the vast expanse of the hall. She could hear the faint rustle of papers from Ethan's study, the soft whisper of his assistant moving in the background, and the occasional creak of a floorboard that seemed to amplify her anxiety. Each step brought her closer to the source of Ethan's suspicion, a delicate balance of fear and determination coiling inside her chest. She remembered the small moments of kindness she had shown. Over the past days, adjusting the seating arrangements for the afternoon meeting, quietly fixing a spill before anyone noticed, ensuring that every document was in its proper place. But she wondered now if such gestures would be misconstrued, twisted into some evidence of negligence or ill intent. Ethan's gaze followed her, sharp and unyielding, his expression a mask of authority, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something else, a trace of curiosity, of need to understand. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against her as if the grand hall itself were holding its breath, waiting for the moment when the truth, the impossible truth that lay hidden in plain sight, would emerge from the quiet corners of the estate. Lila's hands shook slightly as she reached the landing, the polished railing cool beneath her fingers, and she paused, taking in a view of the sprawling estate below, the manicured gardens catching the sunlight, the fountains glimmering like liquid gold. She reminded herself that every action, every small choice, mattered, that the security cameras did not merely watch. They recorded, they revealed, and today they would uncover what had gone unnoticed. Ethan's footsteps approached, deliberate, echoing in the high-ceilinged hall, and Lila felt the weight of his presence settle behind her, the power and expectation pressing like a tangible force. She swallowed hard, straightened her back, and whispered under her breath, more to herself than anyone else, "I hope you understand." And in that suspended moment, with the glint of the chandeliers catching the edges of her nervous expression and Ethan's shadow looming long and sharp, the first threads of revelation began to unfurl, each second stretching, each heartbeat amplifying the tension that would soon give way to the impossible truth. The sun had shifted slightly in the sky, casting a softer light across the Monroe estate, and Lila Johnson moved quietly through the hallway, her polished black shoes making soft clicks against the marble. She carried a folded set of clean linens in her arms, her dark eyes scanning the hall for any indication that Ethan Monroe had changed his expression since their last tense encounter. The air was thick with anticipation, and even the faint scent of polished wood and fresh flowers seemed to heighten her awareness of every footstep and shadow. The security monitors in the corner glimmered faintly, capturing her movements from multiple angles, a silent witness to the hours she spent ensuring that every detail in the estate remained perfect. Lila's thoughts drifted briefly to the last conversation she had overheard in the kitchen, the assistants murmuring quietly about the importance of today's meeting, the possibility that a visitor of great significance would arrive, and the subtle warning in Ethan's voice that suggested nothing could be taken for granted. Her hands tightened around the linens as she approached the grand staircase, the sun's rays catching the fine threads and illuminating the care she had put into folding them, each crease precise, each corner aligned perfectly. She paused for a moment to steady her breathing, listening to the soft murmur of conversation from the study below, the low hum of the air conditioning blending with the distant ticking of the clocks, a rhythm that seemed to echo the tension in her chest. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the faint movement of Ethan Monroe as he stepped into the doorway of his study, his tall frame silhouetted against the golden light, the dark suit impeccably tailored, the subtle shine of the cufflinks catching the reflection. His eyes, sharp and calculating, followed her ascent, the flicker of curiosity evident beneath the composed exterior, betraying a momentary lapse in his otherwise controlled demeanor. Lila's pulse quickened, not with fear alone, but with the awareness that every action she took was under scrutiny, every small gesture potentially holding meaning she could not yet predict. As she reached the second-floor landing, she paused again, looking down the hallway toward the private wing where the meeting rooms were arranged with exacting precision, the sunlight glinting off the brass handles and polished hardwood floors. She remembered the last few days of careful observation, the minor adjustments she had made to the arrangement of documents, the timing of deliveries, and the placement of decorative elements, each choice made with an unconscious hope that her diligence would be recognized, even if silently. Ethan's footsteps approached, deliberate and steady, the echo bouncing off the high ceilings and wide corridors, a reminder of his presence and the authority he wielded effortlessly. Lila straightened her posture, her shoulders squared as she continued down the hallway, aware that the security cameras above would capture every movement, and that soon, the sequence of events they had recorded would reveal the truth that had been hidden beneath assumptions and misjudgments. The estate, usually a backdrop of routine and control, seemed alive with expectation, every reflection in the polished floors and walls amplifying the sense of an imminent revelation. She glanced briefly at the study door, noting the soft gleam of glass and the subtle movement of papers within, and a quiet determination settled over her, reinforcing the careful steps she had taken and the choices that had brought her to this moment. Each breath she drew, measured and steady, carried a mixture of apprehension and resolve, knowing that the unfolding events would soon cast light on the impossible truth and shift the perception of those who had doubted her. The sunlight continued to pool along the hallway, warming the marble surfaces and highlighting the precision of her work, while Ethan Monroe's shadow trailed her, tall and commanding, yet hinting at the vulnerability and surprise that had begun to flicker beneath his watchful gaze. The faint click of the security cameras seemed louder now as Lila Johnson stepped into the private wing, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the polished handrail, feeling the coolness of the marble beneath her touch. Each movement she made was deliberate, precise, a silent negotiation with the space around her, knowing that every action was being recorded, every step scrutinized by Ethan Monroe's vigilant eyes. She paused briefly at the doorway of the meeting room, noting the subtle shimmer of sunlight reflecting off the glass panes and the neat alignment of folders and documents arranged on the long mahogany table. Inside, the quiet murmur of staff moving about, the soft shuffle of papers, and a muted hum of computers created a rhythm that seemed to pulse with anticipation. Lila adjusted the stack of linens she was carrying, folding the edges carefully, her mind racing through the past hours of preparation, each task executed with the hope that her diligence would go unnoticed, but effective in maintaining the seamless order of the estate. Ethan Monroe's presence was palpable even before he stepped into the room, a shadow of authority and expectation that stretched across the polished floors, his dark eyes observing, calculating, weighing every detail of the environment and the actions within it. Lila's gaze flicked toward the monitors perched unobtrusively in the corner, capturing angles she had not yet considered, their glow hinting at the revelations that would soon emerge. She reminded herself of the subtle signals she had learned to read over the past weeks. The way Ethan's jaw tightened slightly when he noticed a misplaced document, the measured pace of his steps across the floor, the brief pause when he adjusted his cufflinks, each movement a silent communication of his expectations and the potential consequences of misjudgment. As she continued along the hallway, the soft click of her shoes on the marble echoed, a metronome of tension that matched the quickening of her heartbeat. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows caught the folds of her uniform, highlighting the care she had taken in maintaining her appearance, the crispness of the fabric a contrast to the invisible burden of scrutiny she carried. Her thoughts drifted to the interaction she had observed between Ethan and his staff, the subtle hierarchy, the unspoken rules that governed behavior, and the small gestures of kindness she had witnessed, which suggested a complexity behind the stern exterior. She adjusted the linens again, her hands steady despite the undercurrent of anxiety, knowing that the sequence of events captured by the security cameras would soon illuminate the truth of her intentions and actions. The distant ticking of the clocks, the soft whir of the air vents, and the faint rustle of papers combined into a symphony of quiet urgency that seemed to stretch time, making every second pregnant with expectation. Lila inhaled slowly, grounding herself in the precision and care that had defined her work, feeling the weight of responsibility and the delicate balance between being seen and remaining unnoticed. As she reached the end of the corridor, the sunlight caught a brass plaque on the wall, glinting faintly, a reminder of the order and structure she had helped maintain and the meticulous attention required to navigate it successfully. The shadows shifted with the sun's movement, highlighting the contours of the polished floors and the careful placement of furniture, reinforcing the sense that the space itself was alive with observation and judgment. Lila paused, placing a soft hand on the doorframe, taking a deep breath, and allowing herself a moment to absorb the significance of the unfolding moment, the quiet tension building toward the revelation that would soon redefine perception, dissolve suspicion, and illuminate the impossible truth that had remained hidden in plain sight. The quiet hum of the estate was suddenly punctuated by the soft beep of the security monitors. As Lila Johnson approached the door to the private study, her eyes flicking briefly to the screens displaying the hallway she had just traversed, each frame a frozen moment of her careful movements. She adjusted the folds of the linens in her arms and straightened her back, the weight of responsibility pressing lightly on her shoulders, a reminder that every small decision mattered in the precise ecosystem of the Monroe estate. Ethan Monroe's presence was felt more than seen, the subtle shift of his silhouette behind the glass panels casting long, measured shadows across the polished marble floors, his watchful gaze following even the faintest motion, the glint of his cufflinks catching the golden afternoon light. The soft click of Lila's shoes on the polished floors seemed amplified in the high-ceilinged corridor, each step marking the passage of time, each moment bringing her closer to the truth waiting to be revealed. Her mind wandered for a brief instant to the events of the morning, the way she had carefully organized the documents in the study, aligning each folder with meticulous precision, and how Ethan had paused at each adjustment, his eyes narrowing slightly as he assessed the order, the subtle tension in the air vibrating in her chest. She could hear the faint rustle of papers and the distant hum of the air conditioning, every sound magnified by the anticipatory silence that seemed to hang over the estate, as though the walls themselves were aware of the impending revelation. Lila took a deep breath, steadying her pulse as she reached for the door handle, feeling the cool metal beneath her fingers, the slight resistance of the mechanism a tactile reminder of the barrier between uncertainty and clarity. Through the glass, she glimpsed the study lined with tall bookshelves, the sunlight streaming in and casting geometric patterns across the floor, highlighting the neat stacks of files and the polished surfaces that reflected both the light and the careful order she had maintained. Ethan's figure moved subtly within, each step purposeful, measured, a silent negotiation of authority and curiosity that Lila had learned to read over the past weeks. The soft creak of the door as she opened it seemed louder than expected, a drumbeat in the stillness, and her eyes caught the faint movement of her own reflection in the glass, a reminder of the scrutiny she was under. She stepped inside, mindful of every gesture, every slight shift in posture, knowing that the cameras captured each movement, each expression, preserving the precise narrative of her actions for those watching. Her thoughts briefly wandered to the purpose behind her every choice, the way she had anticipated potential misunderstandings, and the subtle ways she had maintained order without drawing attention to herself. Ethan's gaze met hers as she moved toward the desk, the tension in the room palpable yet unspoken, his dark eyes calm but intense, reflecting a quiet curiosity that contrasted with the authority he commanded so effortlessly. Lila placed the linens on a nearby chair with careful precision, her hands lingering slightly on the polished wood as she steadied herself, the moment stretching, heavy with anticipation. Every detail seemed amplified. The soft flicker of sunlight on the crystal, the subtle scent of polished wood and fresh flowers, the distant ticking of the clock marking the slow march of time toward understanding. She felt the weight of his observation, the invisible gravity of his attention drawing her focus inward, urging calm and clarity. As Ethan Monroe took a measured step closer, the faint sound of his polished shoes against the marble a reminder of the quiet power he carried. Lila's chest tightened with the awareness that the moment of revelation was near, that the meticulous efforts of her past days, the small acts of care and precision, were about to be recognized, and the impossible truth captured by the security cameras would soon illuminate everything hidden beneath assumption and doubt, revealing both her integrity and the humanity that had gone unnoticed. The soft hum of the air conditioning filled the study as Lila Johnson carefully set the last stack of linens on the nearby chair, her dark eyes glancing toward the polished monitors displaying the hallway she had traversed moments before, each frame frozen in meticulous detail, capturing every small gesture she had made. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows highlighted the smooth surfaces of the mahogany desk and the neatly arranged folders, casting geometric patterns across the marble floors, reflecting the quiet order she had maintained throughout the morning. Ethan Monroe stood near the window, his posture straight and commanding, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity and the faintest hint of surprise as he studied her movements, the contrast between his measured control and the subtle tension in the room creating a rhythm that pulsed in sync with her heartbeat. Lila's thoughts flickered briefly to the preparation she had completed earlier, arranging the documents in perfect alignment, ensuring the decorative elements complemented the room without drawing undue attention, and adjusting the seating for the upcoming meeting with a precision that spoke to both care and discretion. Each step she took toward the corner of the room was deliberate, the polished black shoes clicking softly against the marble, the sound amplified by the high ceilings, echoing in a cadence that seemed to mark the passage of anticipation. The faint rustle of papers and the low hum of the computers blended with the ticking of the clocks, forming a symphony of quiet tension that made every second feel elongated, every breath weighted with expectation. Lila's hands lingered briefly on the smooth surface of the chair as she straightened the linens, her mind reflecting on the subtle cues she had learned to interpret over the past weeks. The way Ethan's shadow shifted with the sunlight, the faint narrowing of his eyes when he noticed an imperfection, the almost imperceptible twitch of a jaw as he processed the environment around him. Each detail a silent communication of authority and the potential for revelation. She reminded herself that the security cameras captured more than just movement. They preserved intention, recording every careful choice she had made, every small act of attentiveness and precision that defined her days within the estate. The quiet anticipation seemed to intensify as Ethan took a step closer, the polished floor amplifying the soft swish of his shoes, the golden light catching the edges of his tailored suit and reflecting faintly in the crystal on the desk. Lila's pulse quickened, not with fear alone, but with the awareness that the culmination of her efforts was near, that the sequence of recorded events would soon illuminate the truth of her actions and intentions. Her eyes flicked to the corner monitors one more time, catching glimpses of herself in multiple angles, each frame a testament to the care and diligence she had maintained. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on her, calm yet piercing, a silent evaluation of character and competence that made the air in the room feel thick and charged. Lila adjusted her posture, squared her shoulders, and took a slow, measured breath, allowing the focus and quiet determination she had carried throughout her mourning to settle over her, preparing her for the moment when the cameras would reveal what had remained unseen, the impossible truth of her diligence and integrity, and the recognition that the subtle acts of care and attentiveness she had performed in silence would finally be acknowledged. The room felt suspended in anticipation, sunlight continuing to play across the floors, walls, and polished surfaces, highlighting the careful balance of order and preparation that defined the estate, while Ethan's presence loomed with quiet authority, waiting for the revelation that would bridge suspicion with understanding and transform both perception and the atmosphere in the study. The security monitors flickered briefly, casting a soft blue glow across the walls of the Monroe estate as Lila Johnson stood perfectly still, her hands resting lightly on the polished mahogany desk, eyes fixed on the screens that displayed the exact sequence of her movements over the past hour. Each frame revealed the precision of her work, the care she had taken with every document, every tray of linens, and every adjustment of decorative elements throughout the estate, a silent record of diligence and integrity that had gone unnoticed until now. Ethan Monroe's footsteps echoed softly behind her, deliberate and measured, the faintest creak of the marble floors marking the slow approach of his presence. She felt the weight of his observation settle in the air, a tangible pressure that made her focus sharpen, every muscle attuned to subtle cues, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the pause in his stride, the shift of his shadow across the polished surfaces. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows painted long, geometric shapes on the floor, highlighting the careful arrangement of the folders and papers she had meticulously aligned, each crease, each corner, a testament to the thoughtfulness and attention she had applied without drawing attention. Lila's mind raced through the moments of the morning, the careful preparation, the precise alignment of every document, the subtle ways she had navigated the estate's routines, and the small gestures of attentiveness that had been recorded in the camera she now studied, each playback a mirror of her conscientious efforts. Ethan's figure loomed near the window, calm yet attentive, the dark suit perfectly fitted, the light catching faint reflections on his polished cufflinks and the edge of his watch, each glint a reminder of the controlled power he commanded. Effortlessly, the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft ticking of the clocks combined with the low murmur of the staff, moving quietly in the background, forming a symphony of subdued anticipation that stretched the seconds into moments weighted with significance. Lila's breath was measured, her shoulders straight, as she adjusted the folds of the linens one final time, the soft whisper of fabric brushing against itself adding a delicate counterpoint to the silence. Her eyes returned to the monitors, watching herself perform small tasks, the alignment of chairs, the precise placement of decorative objects, the careful handling of documents, all actions recorded and magnified in the cool glow of the screens. Ethan Monroe stepped closer, the sound of his polished shoes a soft percussion, and Lila felt a subtle shift in the room, the energy changing from expectation to quiet acknowledgment, attention resolving into clarity. The sunlight continued to illuminate the polished floors, the reflections of crystal, wood, and marble highlighting the contrast between her measured movements and the commanding presence of Ethan, who paused near the doorway, his expression unreadable yet softened by a trace of recognition. Every detail, from the subtle interplay of light on polished surfaces to the precise capture of her gestures on the monitors, seemed to converge in this single suspended moment. The meticulous preparation and thoughtful execution of her work now visible, undeniable, and ready to reveal the truth. Lila drew a slow, deep breath, feeling the weight of hours of careful observation and attentive work lift slightly as the evidence on the monitors made it clear that her actions had been purposeful, considerate, and beyond reproach. Ethan Monroe's gaze held hers steadily, calm yet piercing, acknowledging not only her attention to detail, but the integrity that had guided each step, each movement, and each decision. The room seemed to breathe with them, the sunlight, the shadows, and the subtle sounds of the estate merging to create a quiet crescendo of understanding. In that suspended moment, the cameras recorded not just action, but intention, the impossible truth of Lila's diligence and care standing illuminated in the golden light of the afternoon, and the silent acknowledgment of Ethan Monroe bridging the space between suspicion and comprehension, marking the precise point where doubt dissolved into recognition and respect. The golden light of the afternoon shifted subtly across the study, casting elongated shadows that seemed to stretch toward both Lila Johnson and Ethan Monroe, highlighting the polished surfaces of the mahogany desk and the precise arrangement of folders and papers. Lila stood near the chair, her hands still resting lightly on the folded linens, her posture poised yet relaxed now that the initial tension had begun to ease, the meticulous work she had performed captured in the quiet clarity of the security monitors. Ethan remained near the window, the soft lines of sunlight catching the edges of his tailored navy suit, the faint gleam of his cufflinks and watch reflecting the calm authority he exuded effortlessly. Yet there was a new softness in his gaze as he studied her with quiet acknowledgment. The air in the room seemed to breathe alongside them, a gentle rhythm of anticipation giving way to a slow release, the soft hum of the air conditioning blending with the distant ticking of the clocks and the occasional rustle of papers as the assistants moved discreetly in the background. Lila's eyes traced the patterns of light on the marble floors, noting how each reflection highlighted the order she had maintained, the subtle care in every arrangement she had made, and the invisible diligence that had gone unnoticed until this very moment. She allowed herself a small exhale, the weight of apprehension lifting slightly, replaced by a quiet satisfaction in knowing that the sequence of action she had undertaken with such precision was now visible, undeniable, and appreciated. Ethan took a deliberate step toward the desk, his polished shoes making a soft, measured sound against the marble, and Lila instinctively straightened, acknowledging his presence while maintaining a composed calm. The monitors displayed the playback in real time, showing her movements, the careful handling of each document, and the attentive adjustments she had made to the environment, the impossible truth of her integrity and commitment revealed without embellishment, yet clear and compelling. A faint breeze drifted in from the open window, carrying with it the scent of the manicured gardens outside and the soft floral notes of the arrangements within the study, enhancing the sense of clarity and calm that now permeated the room. Ethan's eyes softened further as he stepped closer, examining not only the actions captured by the monitors, but the person who had performed them, seeing beyond a uniform and the role to the thoughtful, deliberate character revealed in the quiet attentiveness and meticulous care. Lila felt a gentle shift in the room, a subtle acknowledgment of her efforts, the tension dissolving into mutual understanding, and a connection formed through the silent recognition of integrity, responsibility, and the fulfillment of duty done well. The sunlight continued to illuminate the polished floors, the reflections of crystal and would accentuating the order and precision she had brought to the estate, and the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment filled the space, bridging the distance between expectation and recognition. Each breath she took was steady, measured, carrying with it the quiet confidence of someone whose diligence and care had been validated, and Ethan's presence, once a source of formidable scrutiny, now conveyed approval and the beginnings of trust. The room, filled with the soft glow of sunlight, the subtle ambient sounds, and the reflective surfaces of the meticulously maintained environment, seemed to hold a moment suspended, a quiet interlude in which the impossible truth of her intentions and actions was fully revealed, and the acknowledgment of her character and dedication stood illuminated in the clarity of understanding and shared respect. The afternoon light softened further as shadows lengthened across the study, casting intricate patterns on the polished marble floors and reflecting off the crystal ornaments scattered throughout the room, highlighting the meticulous order Lila Johnson had maintained. She stood near the chair where the linens rested, her posture calm but alert, aware that every movement and expression was now part of the story unfolding before Ethan Monroe. His dark eyes, once sharp with suspicion, now held a quiet understanding as he studied the monitors, the playback revealing the careful precision and thoughtful intention behind every small action she had performed throughout the estate. The soft hum of the air conditioning mingled with the faint ticking of the clocks, each sound amplified by the quiet anticipation that filled the room, marking the gradual shift from tension to acknowledgment. Lila's gaze traveled across the room, noting the alignment of folders on the desk, the polished surfaces reflecting the sunlight in a warm glow, the subtle scent of fresh flowers and polished wood creating a serene atmosphere that contrasted with the nervous energy of the morning. Ethan took a measured step closer, his polished shoes echoing softly, the movement deliberate, conveying authority tempered with a hint of curiosity, a silent invitation to bridge the gap between doubt and recognition. Lila adjusted her stance slightly, folding her hands lightly in front of her, maintaining a composed calm, the hours of careful observation and diligent work culminating in this single moment where the truth was no longer hidden. She allowed herself a slow, deep breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease as she realized that the sequence of her actions, captured so precisely on the monitors, had conveyed her integrity, her thoughtfulness, and the conscientious care she had applied to every task. The golden light continued to illuminate the polished surfaces, highlighting the contrast between the order she had created and the imposing presence of Ethan, who now regarded her not with suspicion, but with an emerging respect that subtly softened the room. The quiet rustle of papers and the faint ambient sounds of the staff moving about in the background served as a reminder of the world beyond the study. Yet the focus remained on the interplay of observation, diligence, and recognition unfolding between them. Lila's thoughts drifted briefly to the significance of this moment, the realization that her careful, silent efforts had now been validated, and that her presence in the estate had been acknowledged in a way that transcended mere duty, reflecting character and dedication. Ethan's expression softened further, the slight relaxation of his jaw and the easing of the tension in his shoulders signaling a shift in perception, an understanding of the intentionality and conscientiousness behind each of her actions. The room seemed to pause with them, the sunlight casting gentle highlights on the polished floors, the bookshelves, and the crystal ornaments, creating an atmosphere of clarity and calm that mirrored the resolution taking shape in Ethan's recognition. Lila felt a subtle sense of relief and quiet satisfaction, the culmination of meticulous work and careful attention to detail finally meeting understanding, bridging the divide between suspicion and acknowledgment. Every frame on the monitors told the story she had lived in the quiet hours of observation and diligent care, and Ethan's steady gaze confirmed the validation of her efforts, transforming doubt into appreciation and the careful orchestration of the afternoon into a moment of mutual recognition and trust. The afternoon light began to wane, casting a warm amber glow across the study, stretching the shadows along the polished marble floors and highlighting the orderly alignment of folders, linens, and decorative items that Lila Johnson had so carefully maintained throughout the day. She stood near the window, her posture composed, yet the subtle tension in her shoulders hinted at the culmination of hours of careful observation and meticulous work. Ethan Monroe moved closer to the center of the room, his dark eyes steady and thoughtful, reflecting a depth of understanding that had begun to emerge as he absorbed the evidence of Lila's actions captured by the security cameras. The quiet hum of the air conditioning blended with the distant ticking of the clocks, creating a rhythm that seemed to echo the slow, deliberate unfolding of realization and recognition between them. Lila allowed her gaze to wander briefly over the polished surfaces, noting the soft reflections of sunlight on crystal ornaments and the warm tones of the mahogany desk, each surface a mirror of her attention to detail and the integrity that had guided her throughout the day. Ethan's presence was both commanding and measured, his polished shoes making soft sounds against the marble as he stepped with deliberate precision, the subtle shift in his posture signaling the movement from suspicion to acknowledgment. The playback on the monitors showed the careful choreography of her day, the precise alignment of documents, the gentle handling of delicate items, the thoughtfulness applied to every small task, all actions performed with care and discretion. A faint breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of the manicured gardens outside and the gentle floral notes of the study, blending with the ambient light to create a serene, contemplative atmosphere. Lila felt a subtle release in her chest, the weight of scrutiny and doubt easing as the impossible truth of her diligence, conscientiousness, and integrity was now fully visible, undeniable in its clarity, and recognized by the one whose opinion mattered most in this environment. Ethan paused near the center of the room, the sunlight catching the edges of his tailored suit, highlighting the composed strength of his figure. Yet his eyes held a softness that acknowledged the careful effort and steadfast attention Lila had demonstrated. Every detail, from the polished floors to the alignment of folders and the subtle glow of sunlight across the room, seemed to converge in a moment of quiet understanding. The interplay of observation, preparation, and recognition bridging the gap between doubt and certainty. Lila's hands, lightly resting at her sides, mirrored the calm, resolution settling over. The space, each breath measured and steady as she absorbed the acknowledgment of her work and character. Ethan's gaze held hers with quiet intensity, reflecting not only the appreciation of her actions, but the trust and respect that had been forged through careful attention, integrity, and diligence. The soft hum of the estate, the reflections of sunlight, and the gentle play of shadows across the room seemed to mark the passage of a moment that was both ordinary and extraordinary, the impossible truth fully revealed and recognized. Lila allowed herself a subtle smile, the first of the day, as the tension dissolved into a quiet satisfaction and understanding. Ethan's posture relaxed slightly, a silent acknowledgment of the completion of the day's challenges and the validation of the careful, intentional efforts Lila had contributed. In the stillness of the study, with the sunlight fading and the soft ambient sounds of the estate providing a gentle backdrop, the impossible truth had been revealed, judgment had been replaced with trust, and the recognition of integrity and diligence stood illuminated, creating a bridge between suspicion and understanding that would define the relationship between Ethan Monroe and Lila Johnson from this moment forward.